Welcome. I am Ashley Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious.
I am broadcasting from the Hopetown Inn and Marina on Elbow Cay, right here in the Bahamas. This is the final place anyone saw Lynette Hooker alive, just before. She reportedly fell from the dinghy she shared with her husband, Brian Hooker, and vanished. Her disappearance remains a baffling, unsolved mystery. But I have been talking to local key witnesses who are slowly piecing this puzzle together. Specifically, the first responders who led the search and rescue mission, the local residents who actually spent hours with Brian Hooker, those who spotted and recovered their dinghy from the shore, and the boaters who pulled Brian Hooker aboard. Two local men who interviewed him and spoke to him for hours.
Stepped onto his boat, soulmate.
Eventually salvaged the dinghy and secured it back onto the deck.
By the way, that music playing in the background is a local wedding. Looks like a lively wedding party. Look across the water. That is the Hopetown Inn and Marina.
It is beautiful out there tonight, and they are hosting a gorgeous event. So, expect to hear some background music and upbeat celebration tonight.
By the way, that candy-striped lighthouse over there is incredibly historic. It is one of the only remaining kerosene-fueled, hand-cranked towers in the world.
Incredibly unique. It is a massive historical landmark and a major point of interest for anyone visiting Elbow Cay, especially here in Hopetown near this marina.
Let us get right to it.
I sat down with Pete Calling from the local Hopetown Fire and Rescue. He is a search team leader who responded on Sunday morning, April 5th. That was the exact day Brian Hooker washed ashore at Marsh Harbor, about 4 miles away from where I am currently standing on Elbow Cay.
Pete Calling immediately sprang into action as a dedicated volunteer rescue worker.
He was not just out there walking the shoreline and searching like everyone else, hoping to find Lynette. He actually spent time with Brian. You will hear his complete account, and it is compelling because he knows these islands intimately.
He has lived here with his wife for over 10 years, volunteering for fire and rescue.
First, I need to share some critical developments from the last 12 to 24 hours. This is an isolated community. It is a tiny 7-mile island with just a few hundred residents, which means rumors spread like absolute wildfire. Last night, and we are recording this on Thursday, April 16th, around 10:30 in the evening, while my producer Lindsay and I were finishing up yesterday's podcast, we received a sudden tip that a body had just been found. We heard specific locations: a shallow grave, heavy police presence.
So we rushed out, which is not easy when you are surrounded by water.
We had to catch a water taxi from this exact dock
To carry us across and connect
with the Hopetown mainland, since we are currently over at the marina.
We raced straight to the Abaco Inn, where the police investigation was reportedly centered, but we found absolutely nothing. Not a soul.
Next, we pushed further down to the Sea Spray Inn and Marina. Rumor had it this was the actual crime scene,
The exact spot of the rumored shallow grave.
but there was nothing. Absolutely dead silent. No police presence, no investigators. Honestly, there was no movement here at all.
Staff at the Sea Spray confirmed it has been completely quiet lately. Maybe one guest remained, and the staff were already winding down for the night. The whisper was completely baseless, yet all across the island today, locals kept asking each other, "Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear?"
It is simply not true. Rumor debunked, though these stories spread like wildfire. And honestly, heading out on the open water at 10:30 or 11:30 at night is no picnic. Crossing over, driving 10 minutes, just to verify if some lead was actually true.
But we chased it down anyway. The verdict? Total crickets. It is not true.
Another crucial piece of the puzzle is Carly Ellsworth, who is Lynette Hooker's daughter. She landed yesterday over in Nassau, which is a short distance away, maybe a 30-minute flight. Then today, she and her boyfriend, Steve, touched down here in Marsh Harbor. Marsh Harbor lies roughly 4 miles from where I am right now on Elbow Cay. Just 4 miles across the water. Remember, Brian claimed Lynette went overboard with the ignition key, leaving him to drift helplessly for 4 miles all the way to Marsh Harbor. Anyway,
They have made it to Marsh Harbor, planning their next move. That sound in the background is the local ferry, by the way.
they hope to cross over here to Elbow Cay, possibly sometime tomorrow.
So we will watch for their arrival. Meanwhile, active search efforts continued today.
It has been a daily occurrence out here, but I can confirm this much. Those American search teams we spotted, specifically the ones handling the search dog, the specialized cadaver dog, we obtained a photo of them boarding a ferry.
And the local witness spotted the dog, that same small dog named Maggie, wearing the sheriff collar we noted yesterday.
They were on the 8 a.m. ferry heading from Hopetown over to Marsh Harbor.
Honestly, that struck me as odd, because the Royal Bahamas Police Force should have,
In my opinion, been transporting them directly, since they have multiple police vessels stationed right here.
Instead, the team relied on a public ferry to transport the dog to Marsh Harbor. Furthermore, in a completely separate development, 3 representatives of that same group we saw yesterday, United States Coast Guard investigators.
3 of them were spotted scanning Marsh Harbor near where Brian's dinghy initially washed ashore.
That location is roughly 150 yards south of the local boatyard.
We will break down far more details regarding these specific coordinates throughout this episode.
For now, the intent search continues,
With active searching concentrated around Marsh Harbor.
Meanwhile, the American specialists headed out early at 8 a.m. for Marsh Harbor, and witnesses later spotted 3 of them actively searching the area just 2 hours afterward.
The investigation remains highly active. The ground is buzzing, and the rumor mill is spinning. People are sharing all kinds of information, some of it true, some of it wildly false. Many simply claiming they heard it on TikTok.
So we always tread very carefully there. But investigators are clearly piecing together the final movements of Brian and Lynette.
Let us look at my recorded conversation with Pete Calling.
To speak with Pete, we visited the Firefly Resort,
Which you might recall from our previous coverage.
Of Elbow Cay, as one of the spots where Brian and Lynette Hooker spent time on the final day she was ever seen.
They spent hours at Firefly, from 11 a.m. until roughly 4 p.m., before pulling up anchor just off the resort's private beach.
sailing the Soulmate, the yacht they called home, just up the coast.
Hardly even.
A quarter of a mile toward the Abaco Inn and Resort. That is where she was.
Last spotted by anyone other than her husband.
Let us turn to my revealing discussion with Pete Calling. He commands the local Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue Team.
Pete was on scene around 7 that morning as crews
Searched for Lynette, trying to make sense of Brian's story after he washed ashore just 2 hours earlier. They had to weigh his statement carefully,
comparing his timeline against the elements, the shifting winds, and the heavy surf.
Pete brings critical puzzle pieces to light.
As an eyewitness to the morning's chaos, he also ended up spending direct time with Brian.
That interaction fascinated me. I pressed him for details about what Brian actually claimed during those moments,
How he behaved.
and the exact nature of their intense one-on-one interaction during those critical hours.
My full conversation with Pete Calling. Today's episode is sponsored by Wildgrain. If you crave bakery fresh bread but lack the time to go find a baker, this subscription service is one of the easiest solutions around.
Wildgrain delivers outstanding bake-from-frozen sourdough,
Artisan pastries and fresh pasta directly to your doorstep. Each item features clean ingredients that you can easily pronounce. It means incredible flavor that is much gentler on your stomach. Just slide it into the oven. No thawing, no prep work, and within 25 minutes, your whole home smells like a bakery. You do not have to take my word for it. With 40,000 5-star reviews, they were voted the top food subscription box by USA Today 3 years running. For a limited time, Wildgrain offers $30 off your first box, plus free croissants for life when you visit wildgrain.com/Banfield to start today. That is $30 off. Your debut order with free croissants for life.
wildgrain.com/Banfield or apply the promo code Banfield at checkout.
Let us begin. Walk me through that morning. What were you doing when the emergency call came in?
The first distress signal came into our station at
Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue at 5:12 a.m.
I did not arrive on the scene until later that morning.
But 5 of our active crew members launched the rescue boat almost immediately.
And I headed over to Marsh Harbor to coordinate with the local police where the dinghy was found.
A couple of hours later, I met up with them,
Joining another deputy on his personal boat to begin the search.
We canvassed the entire stretch south of where they located the dinghy, searching for any sign of her.
That first day on the water yielded absolutely nothing.
We knew the core details of the story he gave police during their initial contact,
Specifically where she supposedly went overboard and around what time, along with when he reached land,
and the claim that he lost an oar along the way. He claimed he lost an oar. Yes, that is exactly what he told them. He also mentioned that, at some point, he anchored the dinghy and fired a flare.
Was it just one single flare or several? Was he specific about that?
He was pretty vague about it.
Okay. But he definitely claimed he fired one? That was our understanding, yes.
Now, you know these waters, you know boats, and you know the local mariners. If someone shoots off a flare at 8 p.m., it is pitch blackout. Would everyone see it and think, oh my God, that is a flare?
You would think so, though it is not completely impossible to miss.
We have to stick strictly to the facts, and while it is highly improbable,
It is technically possible that
he launched that flare and simply nobody was around to spot it.
but realistically, it is highly unlikely.
That Saturday night was crowded, right? Those harbors are packed.
If anyone spots a flare, word spreads fast and emergency services get called.
Yet we received 0 reports of any distress signals that night.
Just think about it. I have spent a lifetime on boats, and twilight is one of the busiest, most social times to be out on the deck. Rather than hiding inside the cabin, missing whatever is happening up in the sky.
So it is fair to assume plenty of boaters would be lounging outside in that anchorage on a Saturday night.
Right. Absolutely. There would have been quite a crowd out there who easily could have seen a flare. Yes. And still, nobody reported seeing anything. Not to our knowledge, no.
Describe what happened when you first came face to face with Brian.
My colleague and I met him on Monday morning. We had spent all of Sunday searching.
Then, first thing Monday morning,
We coordinated with the local police, informing them that we were headed out to recover the abandoned dinghy.
So,
My partner and I set out in his personal vessel,
which was smaller and highly maneuverable, perfect for getting into tight, shallow spots.
We navigated over, spotted the dinghy, and I pulled our boat right alongside it.
I basically slipped off into waist-deep wire and waded over to the dinghy.
So you were the first to find the dinghy beached over at Marsh Harbor?
First one from the department, I think.
And nothing had been moved yet.
One thing that caught my eye, there was only one oar inside.
Was it damaged? He claimed to his friends that his oar broke.
No, there was just one.
Just a single oar in that boat.
There was a spent flare in there, but only one.
Was there a flare gun, and could you tell it had been shot?
Right. There were 2 life jackets. 2 orange life vests sitting inside. Lying on the bottom?
Yeah, just on the floor of the boat.
Did they seem rotten, waterlogged, or completely useless for saving a life?
they were just there for legal compliance.
Any chance they were totally ruined? No, probably not.
They looked like the standard orange life vests you find in every local boat around here. But the anchor was secured around a tree on the shoreline.
So we untied it and loaded everything back on board.
That must have been a pretty rough landing, right?
From what I understand, where he hit land was incredibly rocky. Yes, very rocky.
Navigating through that specific terrain is absolutely not an easy task.
There are no clear roads, walking paths, or anything like that.
It was seriously rugged.
So how hard is it to get from the spot where he claims he landing all the way to the boatyard? He mentioned pushing through thick brush and struggling to make it.
That trek is definitely not an easy stroll.
It would take someone quite some time. It is not exactly a clear path or a quick 5-minute walk to anyone.
It would be an exhausting trek, especially in the dead of night.
Are we looking at 10 minutes or more like an hour?
It really depends, honestly. You have to put yourself in his shoes out there and realize
That you have no real idea where you are headed.
So it is entirely plausible that it took him an hour to reach someone from where he beached.
right. And at 4 or 5 in the morning, nobody is out there. Plus, it is pitch black.
Yeah, dawn is not until 6.
So that makes sense. Yeah, understood.
We are trying to piece together that 9-hour gap. He claims she fell overboard at 7:30, but he only hit Marsh Harbor at 4 in the morning.
Right.
Captain, of course, we are sitting in a restaurant, so it is a bit noisy, and you might hear some people dining upstairs.
Yet the charter captain I interviewed insisted that he
Swam that exact stretch in 2 hours during a race.
4 miles is a long haul, but it is entirely possible.
But you still think drifting would take 9 full hours?
let us shave off an hour for fighting through the brush and everything else.
Leaving 7.5 to 8 hours just to drift there in that wind?
The reality is, a series of bad choices could easily drag it out that long.
It is highly unlikely, but certainly not impossible. If he was simply drifting with the breeze,
I estimate it should have taken
3 or 4 hours, about half the time he claimed.
Right. Again, his version of events was that he threw the anchor out for a while.
paused, shot off some flares, and tried to signal a passing vessel.
now, looking at this strictly personally, not in any official law enforcement capacity,
Based on the timeline he provided,
It just is not probable.
it is not a scenario we would
Usually expect, but it is not impossible.
If he really did what he claimed, anchoring, trying to wave down boats and all of that,
Before eventually giving up and choosing up, simply drift along to the place where he eventually ended up.
and then hiked to find help, yes, it could have taken that long.
So, how did he act when you first encountered him?
Well, we went to pick up his dinghy that Monday morning, towed it back, and pulled right alongside his vessel.
He was instantly grateful.
He seemed relieved we had showed up with his tender so he could finally move around.
He was.
highly focused on pulling up anchor to get his vessel back to Marsh Harbor.
He mentioned that friends and family were on their way,
planning to help him search the waters.
so we gladly pitched in. I helped him secure the dinghy on board. Honestly, he just seemed incredibly thankful.
He was remarkably stoic, showing little emotion.
But did he? I mean, everyone processes grief differently. But did he act like a man who had just lost his wife to the ocean hours before?
Honestly, it is hard to judge since everyone is different.
But, judging by his tattoos, the man was a former Marine. He had USMC tattooed right on his shoulder.
So that was one of the clues that
Suggested to me that he was just a highly disciplined, stoic guy. I have known plenty of sailors living here for 10 years, and he was just incredibly matter-of-fact. First, we handle this, then we move straight to the next step.
I have to clear out of here, pick up my family, and get right back to the search and rescue effort.
So that was basically it. I didn't really,
We both actually grew up in Michigan. Or at least I did. We exchanged some brief small talk about our Michigan roots. But that was all. You connected over Kalamazoo?
Yeah, exactly right.
So, that was pretty much the entire extent of our casual conversation.
Everything else was strictly business. I even assisted him with pulling up his boat's anchor.
So,
He ran the windlass and got the anchor fully raised.
And then you headed to that beach dinghy over at Marsh Harbor?
correct. We looked it up.
And towed it right back across to Elbow Cay, where Soulmate was anchored.
That is correct. Was he in the vessel with you guys? No, he stayed on his own boat. We did not bring him on board with us at all.
You did not take him. Then how did he get back in that dinghy?
No, that dinghy had absolutely no power.
Wait, how did he actually get back? So, how did everyone return from that beached dinghy?
At Marsh Harbor, all the way back to Elbow Cay?
We actually took a private vessel over there. Another member of the department and I rowed out, hooked up his dinghy,
And towed the small boat back to Soulmate, which was where Brian was waiting.
So he was already aboard the yacht.
Did someone else transport him back to Soulmate?
Exactly.
Describe what it was like towing that tender back, because you gave a really vivid description of the exact state that dinghy was in.
I have to tell you, I would never want to own that thing.
It was incredibly light.
If you have ever towed an empty water tube, you know how much it bounces around.
It was way too light. Honestly, it acted more like a sail than a boat, catching every gust of wind. Heading straight into the wind against the waves, the whole thing was just extremely unstable.
Definitely not safe.
It is absolutely not something I would ever want to ride in during rough sea conditions. It was far from being a proper, rigid, inflatable boat.
Just cheap, molded fiberglass. It was lightweight, sat way too high in the water, and
that was really the distinct impression I walked away with after seeing that cheap vessel.
it felt like a very cheaply manufactured dinghy.
So if you were to put, say, 2 grown adults on board, weighing perhaps 150 and 200 pounds, bringing the total load to 350 pounds on that craft. Does that change things, or is it still highly unstable?
It was a tiny, lightweight dinghy from the start, so that really does not help much.
Well, again, hard to judge in those rough weather conditions, but it certainly was not a solid, seaworthy boat to begin with. So yeah,
Let me be clear. My focus is strictly on the facts, and I want to extend every benefit of the doubt, but
it is completely possible that someone could just slip and tumble out of that boat, right?
That was my impression, that if a sudden gust hit it, the whole thing would get incredibly unstable. Do you recall the weather conditions on Saturday night, April 4th, around 7:30? To be completely honest, I do not. Several other officers from the department were out on patrol that night, just making rounds. And they mentioned how strong the wind was, noting its direction and that it felt pretty severe.
I recall it being windy all week long. Local fishermen were stuck at the docks, unable to go out.
Personally, I do not recall the exact weather conditions that evening. From what I gather, a local captain we have been consulting was out there and estimated winds at 18 knots. Now, keep in mind, you are on the sheltered lee side of Elbow Cay. The wind could be howling on the Atlantic side, while it remains calm and protected here. With 18-knot winds, what are we looking at right outside the channel by the Abaco Inn?
To be fair, it would easily still feel like 18 knots out there.
You have to consider the opening right there near White Sound.
you see, there is barely any high ground to block the breeze, so it sweeps right across the land and drops back down.
So, once you reach the very end of the channel, you are taking the full brunt of those unobstructed gusts, honestly. So the dinghy was incredibly light, acting like a sail, behaving almost like an inner tube, bouncing wildly in the wake behind a boat, completely unstable. Even with 400 pounds of weight, or maybe 350 pounds aboard, does it sound like a credible scenario that she was just tossed overboard?
Highly improbable, but technically possible.
In my view, it could happen.
In your opinion, then? That is crucial because you are a local here.
You understand these waters, you know the island lifestyle, you are a sailor, and you do emergency rescue. I reside here, but I am not native. I just live here. I am an outsider, but after 10 years, you can surely claim this place as home. Not quite. I am not sure what the official timeline is to be considered a local, but you definitely understand this area. You certainly know far more than I do. That is certain. All right, so once you return to Brian's vessel with that inflatable boat,
Or rather, the dinghy. Take it from there.
We helped him pull the dinghy up onto Soulmate.
We hooked onto the dinghy and hauled it up.
We handed over his missing oar, which he stowed directly on board Soulmate.
So now it is back on the sailboat on the main vessel.
That single oar recovered from the floor of the dinghy is currently resting on the keelboat.
Right, and that was it.
Like I said, there wasn't much small talk.
It was just, well, you helped hoist the dinghy?
Got the dinghy up onto his vessel.
I was standing at the helm, helping keep the vessel facing the wind while he worked the windlass to raise the anchor.
He hauled the anchor up, secured it, and walked back over.
He took over steering, so I hopped back to my partner's boat and wished him luck.
He said he was going to reach out to another person with a boat
who could help his family and friends keep searching.
He said that to you?
Yes.
And did he actually contact you?
Yes, he did.
And what did he want?
He wanted to either charter a vessel or rent one with a captain.
I passed along a few local contacts, and that was pretty much where it ended.
Did he actually call them?
I think he did.
I have no idea what came of it, or if he ever went out with them. I honestly don't know.
This was all happening on Easter Sunday.
So this was the morning after she vanished.
No, it was Monday, right?
So he had Monday daytime, all of Tuesday, and then by Wednesday, he was arrested.
He wouldn't have had much time to get out.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm not sure if he ever made it out there with anyone.
Did he ever say anything to you like,
I'm not leaving until I find her, or I'll search until she's found?
Did he say anything like that?
Yes, he did. When I wished him luck with the search, he replied, well, I'll be around.
I'm not leaving until I find her.
He told you that as well.
He did, not leaving until he found her.
Right, so were you surprised to learn yesterday that he boarded a plane and left?
I was, honestly.
There are a lot of details in this case that have surprised me. And that was absolutely one of them.
And before we sat down for this interview, we actually had breakfast here. It's a beautiful place. The Fireside?
Firefly. The Firefly Inn. It is a really nice place.
Yeah, usually. They were actually here earlier in the day.
Did anyone at the inn say anything about them?
No, I hadn't personally heard anything about what they were doing earlier that day. I know it was confirmed they spent time at the bar before leaving that night.
And honestly, that is all I know. The rest is just rumor.
I've heard they were here, but I haven't heard that directly from anyone who actually saw them.
I have talked to practically everyone I can find.
They just seemed completely unremarkable.
They did not leave much of an impression. Normally in these investigations, you hear whispers about a massive blowout fight. Stories about them drinking too much or someone losing their temper, but we are not finding anything like that here.
Is anyone talking about that? Have you heard any local rumors of unusual behavior before she vanished?
Anything out of the ordinary before she disappeared?
I have heard plenty of gossip on this island, especially when it comes to this specific case. But nobody has mentioned anything like that to me.
Neither have I.
And I actually interviewed people who were at the Abaco Inn.
One staff member on duty that night did not even realize they had been on the property.
The physical descriptions meant nothing to him. They just sat by the pool, ordered 2 rounds of drinks, and left.
2 Bacardi Lights with soda.
Nothing out of the ordinary occurred to make them stand out.
That is surprising, especially if investigators are working on the theory that some kind of physical altercation took place.
If a violent incident really did happen out there,
You would expect some kind of warning sign first.
but we are simply not finding any evidence of that.
Nobody has mentioned that to me.
I also discussed the geography of the Sea of Abaco with some of the local detectives.
It is incredibly shallow. Out on the boat, I could easily see the sandy bottom the entire time.
If there was a drowning in the Sea of Abaco, recovery teams would find them, right?
I mean, it is rare for a victim of a boating accident or drowning to go missing forever, but every case has its own variables.
You know,
We have not had a single case in the last 10 years where a missing boater was never recovered.
There was an incident back in 2015 involving a young local man
who disappeared right off his vessel.
and his remains were never recovered.
That was in Marsh Harbor, right?
Yes, that occurred over in Marsh Harbor.
Is the water significantly deeper over there? Not really.
No, the entire stretch between here and the mainland of Great Abaco is quite shallow.
But we did.
On the following Sunday, another officer and I, right after we completed our initial search of the Marsh Harbor area,
Covering the coast north and south of the recovered dinghy,
We headed back.
we went back to this spot.
where she reportedly went overboard. We initiated a search spanning a 40-degree cone from that exact drop point.
Calculating the drift and the shifting wind patterns.
Exactly. We mapped out a triangular grid near the entrance of White Sound Channel, right where she supposedly fell off the vessel.
The northern tip of Lubbers Island and a small outcrop named Porgy Rock.
Forming a tight search triangle right in that area.
You start to wonder if he got completely disoriented.
Meaning things might not have happened where he claimed they did. Our team combed that entire sector for 2 more hours, crisscrossing the triangle over and over, leaving no stone unturned.
I stood right at the bow of the vessel, scanning the seabed for anything.
But look, if there was a body down there, we would have spotted it, right?
The water is crystal clear.
Exactly. The water is incredibly clear here and quite shallow.
And, remember, they had drones in the air, plus search planes and sonar scouring the depths. The United States Coast Guard did send an aircraft over.
They ran a grid search too.
Stretching from Marsh Harbor to the spot she supposedly fell overboard.
As I mentioned, we had a major search party,
Combing the entire shoreline of Elbow Cay, while others patrolled the coast of Lubbers,
That smaller island sitting just to the west.
yet nobody found a single clue Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday.
The shifting winds were highly unpredictable.
So we had to wait until Tuesday before safely launching our first drone.
We scanned the entire northern tip of Lubbers, but found no trace of her.
The sole piece of evidence we recovered,
Spotted by fellow department members who joined the search, was the green flotation device.
And where was it found?
it was floating just a few hundred feet from the abandoned dinghy.
So it actually aligned with the story he told investigators, claiming he threw it to her. If the boat drifted that way,
The green life preserver ended up right near it.
Let me wrap my head around that. You are drifting miles off Elbow Cay. You throw the life preserver?
And both the boat and the Christian
drift along the exact same path.
Does that even sound plausible?
landing within a few hundred feet.
Right. Like I said, the prevailing wind is really the main factor deciding where things drifted that day.
But there is another major discrepancy. He claims Lynette went overboard carrying the dry bag with their passports and the backup key. The other massive red flag is no.
That is fine. We were just adjusting that.
Brian insists Lynette fell in holding that dry bag.
Containing their critical passports and the spare key to the electric outboard motor.
Right. A dry bag would float, wouldn't it? Yes, absolutely.
And it hasn't turned up anywhere? As far as I know.
Nobody has spotted it yet.
Did they ever describe its actual size?
No, they didn't.
Look, I'm not with the police department. I try to keep my distance from the active investigation and all that. I'm just
With fire and rescue, I just do my best to carry out whatever they ask of us.
And they had us search the entire area. Which we did, but we found absolutely nothing. They found the life vest a couple feet south of where the dinghy drifted.
Was it near the point? Yes, heading towards Witch's Point.
All right, so that was basically it.
There was no dry bag.
And no other clues or debris that we could link back to her vessel. Based on the cone you mapped, looking out from Elbow Cay over toward Lubbers, and way off in the distance, 4 miles away,
To Marsh Harbor, do you think his drift path with an unmanned,
disabled boat would have washed him ashore on Lubbers?
or is it far more likely
He missed Lubbers completely and floated all the way
across to Marsh Harbor, where he eventually landed?
It would have been a close call. From where she went overboard and how the wind blew them, it is.
Again, entirely possible that his version of events actually happened.
His scenario is definitely a distinct possibility.
Given that she fell overboard right there, and looking at the wind direction, that is likely where the dinghy would end up.
Let's talk about what is actually in your makeup. Many of us worry constantly about what we eat, what we drink,
And how we protect our families. Yet we plaster our faces with cosmetics loaded with harsh chemicals we can't even pronounce.
Your skin is your body's largest organ, meaning whatever you put on it gets absorbed.
That is exactly why I choose Toops & Co. Let me tell you what I love.
Their liquid foundation and facial primer don't just mask your skin, they actively nourish it.
A lot of makeup needs endless touch-ups, leaving your face feeling heavy and severely clogged. But this formula feels incredibly
Light, never cakes, and actually holds up all day long. If you're sick of putting mystery ingredients on your face, you don't have to anymore. Streamline your daily routine and truly feel good about what you put on your body.
Go to tupsandco.com/Banfield.
They're giving my listeners 25% off your initial purchase with the code BANFIELD.
Again, that is Toops & Co. Let me spell it out. TOUPSandCO.com/Banfield. Toopsandco/Banfield. Just use code BANFIELD to get 25% off your first order.
Or you can simply tap the link down in the description.
When you stepped onto Soulmate at anchor,
That was the final spot Lynette and Brian anchored before heading to the Abaco Inn, but they never made it back to that vessel that night.
If you buy Brian's version,
they never actually returned to the boat.
when you stepped aboard, how far out was it anchored?
200 yards.
Roughly, yeah. It was not very far out, if you see what I mean.
Basically where that blue boat sits.
Or maybe near the white one.
That white vessel directly behind? Yes, this specific white boat right here.
So they were close to shore.
See, the closer you stay to the shoreline,
The more you shield yourself from the wind. So he was anchored just off Aunt Pat's Bay. Yes.
Just 200 yards out, give or take. Did he ever pinpoint exactly where she went overboard?
I did not press him.
We avoided discussing the details that night. Once again, he was completely emotionless.
His sole focus was lifting the anchor, securing the vessel, and getting back to Marsh Harbor for his family.
Definitely. If you are navigating an 8-foot dinghy like theirs, it is incredibly tight.
It is très.
Leaving the Abaco Inn, the logical move is to hug the coastline.
You would avoid the main channel leading to the deep water.
Unlike the larger vessels that draw more water.
You know, draft, since a small dinghy can skim across 2 feet of water easily.
That makes sense. They would have stayed close to shore on their route, just heading in a straight line back to the yacht.
Exactly, especially when you are racing against the failing daylight.
right?
At 7:30 at night.
Powered by a tiny 2, 3, or maybe 4 horsepower engine. I do not recall, but it was minuscule.
It was a small electric motor, actually, and
Again, cutting close to shore is the most logical path.
they definitely would have hugged that corner and stayed near land.
Are there sharks out there in those shallows?
Absolutely.
I can guarantee you there are bull sharks circling that area every single day at sunset.
Right at dusk.
And around 5:30, fishermen return to clean their catch, which triggers major feeding frenzies.
Right by Marnie Creek, which lies further south down the coast.
Marnie Creek is further down.
It is prime shark territory. There are several docks where locals gather, cleaning their fish as the sun goes down, and that dock is definitely one of them.
So, Yes, it is common knowledge that predators frequent these local waters.
Though documented attacks on humans are incredibly rare. We have only had a single documented shark attack on this island in 15 years, knock on wood. Still, that is just the reality of living out here.
But another source raised a question.
If a shark actually attacked her, some evidence would have remained.
You would expect something to wash ashore, a piece of clothing or personal item.
They can consume a body whole. At least, that is how they explained it.
Exactly.
So there was absolutely no sign on that shore of a shark attack occurring within 200 yards of the beach.
Right. Yeah. During that brief window of time you spent with Brian,
How long would you say you actually spent with him? Maybe an hour in total?
Not even that. Perhaps 30 to 45 minutes.
Did he seem defensive at all, offering up excuses for why everything went down the way it did?
No.
honestly, he was incredibly direct about the tasks that lay ahead.
He behaved like any typical boat captain when you step onto their vessel.
It was more like, I need you right here.
I need you to handle this, you do that, and then we are out of here. That was it.
He was just extremely focused and direct about the entire situation.
So tell me, you have been doing this work for a long time. We discussed this earlier over breakfast before starting the interview. And you mentioned that living on an island this small while working in emergency fire and rescue, you end up rescuing folks you actually know. And sadly, you recover a lot of people who did not make it.
So you understand this work. You understand these situations. What is your honest take on what really went down here?
It is strange, definitely.
There are so many unresolved gaps. We have a lot of
Details that do not
line up with the standard timeline or pattern you would normally expect to see.
But I also realize that a chain of poor choices while out on the ocean.
One bad call after another. And things can become incredibly
Hazardous extremely quickly out there.
even in calmer inland waters. And these are inland waters, yes.
So it is difficult.
I try to keep an open mind for everyone and focus strictly on the hard evidence of what occurred. But yes, so many massive questions remain unanswered.
Look, finding zero trace of Lynette is deeply unsettling for everyone, especially for her loved ones.
And that is exactly what we
Care about most, getting them some concrete answers. Look, I try my best not to judge anyone.
I am not law enforcement, nor the Coast Guard.
It is not my job to decide if there was malice involved.
I cannot pretend to know his intent, but strictly speaking, he is the only soul who knows what happened that night. But I do know how incredibly fast situations can spiral out of control. And believe me, when you are out on open water, one bad decision can trigger a deadly crisis before you can even react.
He admitted that much. He confessed he did not drop anchor quickly enough.
They had been drinking, wore no life jackets, and never dropped the anchor.
That adds up to a chain of fatal errors, assuming his story is true.
But if his story is a lie, and that is a massive if, we simply do not know.
Should we not have located her by this point?
With the treacherous conditions in these waters, hope is all we have left.
We are desperately praying for any piece of evidence to take us one step closer to uncovering what really happened out there.
It has been nearly 2 weeks now.
2 full weeks this Saturday, and today is already Thursday. That is an agonizingly long time to be adrift, if his account holds up. So, the search continues. We will keep looking.
We will continue scouring every single sector we possibly can,
Mapping out every potential theory of her disappearance, and hunting for any physical proof to support those claims. That is our only option. We stand with you and wish you luck. I sincerely hope your team can help bring some much-needed closure to her devastated family.
Her daughter just arrived on the island, and her mother is utterly shattered.
They are completely desperate for answers, as anyone would be. Godspeed. Thank you for your dedicated service. We appreciate it.
Let us remind everyone, this is an entirely unpaid volunteer rescue operation.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue is indeed a completely self-funded volunteer organization.
We rely 100% on public donations to exist.
That means seasonal homeowners, tourists, and travelers.
The very people we protect.
We receive zero government funding, meaning we depend entirely on private charity to maintain our life-saving safety gear.
Our training, maintenance,
Which is incredibly costly, plus boat fuel and overall operations.
please visit htvfr.org.
HopetownVolunteerFireandRescue.org. Let me repeat that.
HTVFR.
Exactly. Donate online at htvfr.org.
It is a vital cause. Keep up the essential work, and thank you.
Thank you for your time and for speaking so honestly with us.
Our absolute pleasure.
Just trying to help. Thank you.